So, good evening, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about the corneal transplantation and scleral contact lenses, their role in management of keratoconus. So, this is the third part of my series on keratoconus management. What next? So, I will have to declare that I have no financial interest because I'm going to be talking about scleral contact lenses. Now, if we see that the keratoconus cornea is a little different from the normal cornea. So, if you can see, this is the normal cornea, which is nice and round, and the keratoconus cornea, which is irregularly and a little bit conical in shape. And because of this, the fitting of normal glasses or even soft contact lenses, or sometimes in special cases, even rigid contact lenses, is not very useful to the patients in terms of vision. However, in the changed paradigm of management of keratoconus, we can't say that the patient is unsuitable for contact lenses without undergoing a special contact lens trial, and this includes the scleral contact lenses. Now, if we see that a normal cornea is something like a dome shape, whereas the keratoconus cornea is a little bit more conical. Now, this conical cornea makes it difficult for a normal lens, which is spherical, to fit on it perfectly. Therefore, scientists have come up with the idea of a scleral contact lens. Now, the scleral contact lens, as you are seeing on the screen, actually rests on the sclera. So, it doesn't rest on the cornea; it rests on the white part of the eye, that is the sclera. Now it rests on that, and therefore it creates a sort of a space in between the cornea and the new lens, and that liquid reservoir is filled with some fluid. This liquid reservoir and the lens itself create a new interface for the light to pass through. So you are actually creating a new cornea for the light to pass through and to change. And we can also give some power to this lens. So if the patient requires a particular shape to fit on his sclera, and a particular power to correct the number that he has, then that can be done within the same system. Now, if you can see that every eye is different in terms of the cornea shape as well as in the terms of the scleral shape. So, as you can see in this diagram, there is optical zone, there is a transitional or intermediate zone, and a haptic zone. Now, this is the shape of the scleral lens which requires fitting. So, because like I said, every eye is different. So, the scleral fitting and the corneal fitting is going to be different for each eye. So, once we see the eye, there is a trial frame set, and the trial lenses can be fitted, and we have various parameters by which we check whether there is adequate exchange of the fluid to the liquid reservoir, and there is also, it should not be too tight or it should not be floating also. So although we feel that the eyeball should be round and perfectly spherical, it's not so. In some places the sclera may be flat, in some places the cornea may be flat or too steep. So for all these purposes, we need to see a variety of lenses, try to see how the fitting is best for the patient, see how the patient is responding to it, and see the comfort level of the patient. So because of this, we have a scleral contact lens trial which lasts for anything between half an hour to 4 hours to see the effect of the lens on the patient himself, on the eye, and how comfortable he is with it, and whether it is blanching the blood vessels or not, and whether it's leading to visual improvement or not. So these are the few things that we see during a contact lens trial. Now once the contact lens trial is successful, then the contact lens is ordered, because within the trial set the lenses are without the power. During the contact lens trial, we also check what is the additional power that is required, and then send the contact lens customized for making. Once this is sent for making, we get the new contact lens. Now this is how a typical contact lens looks, a scleral contact lens looks on the eye. Now if you can see that this is the white portion that is between just after the cornea is over, you have the white area, and this is the sclera. So this distance is what decides what type of scleral contact lens it is. So we have mini scleral and large scleral lenses. Mini scleral lenses typically have only 6 millimeter of a zone in the sclera, and the large ones have more than 6 millimeters. Both of them actually bear on the sclera only. The load bearing is on the sclera only, but the total diameter of the lenses may be small or large. Now the advantage of a mini scleral lens is that the fluid reservoir required is not very large, and it's much easier to fit, because you don't have a large area to calculate or fit. But the large scleral lenses are useful in some situations where the cone is very steep, or in cases in other indications like severe dry eyes because of Stevens Johnson's, etc. So leave it to the doctor or to the person who is doing your contact lens fitting to decide which one is a better option for you. Now, there is a lot of stigma associated with contact lenses, and most often when we offer this option to keratoconus patients, they feel hesitant to take it up, and that's because there is some fear factor related to the contact lens use itself, and that involves the risk of infection or the risk of it falling down, or a lot of other misconceptions that you have to put it, remove it, all those things. Now, I always tell my patients that using a contact lens is like driving a car. So, if you know the rules of the road, if you know how to drive the car, then most probably you are not going to meet with an accident. So, we have something called the 3 C's. So, you have clean hands, clean habits, clean lenses, and the clean case. So, clean habits would mean wash your hands or keep a clean towel and keep the space, overall space, some people have very unhygienic habits, so keep your overall space very clean. This will be clean habits, and the next would be clean lenses. So when you are using the lens, it is very imperative to use a contact lens cleaning solution. Now these cleaning solutions have an expiry date, so it's important that you keep checking it. So sometimes you have a big bottle and then you've just forgotten to see its expiry date, and then you're using it beyond the expiry, so that's not done. Or when you are using it, also be very careful, like your hand should be clean before you handle the lens, and use a fresh solution every time, don't use the last time solution. So these are some basic things which we again educate the patients, and like I said, very simple. If you follow these rules, then you're going to be safe even on the road. And the last thing is the clean case. So again, the contact lens itself is within a case, and that case itself has can get dirty, like there can be dust falling in it. So you keep it clean. Use some clean tissues, fresh tissues. Air dry the case after you wash it. So these are some routine measures. Now the next thing I'm going to talk about after contact lenses. Now again, like I said, it's a spectrum of management. Not all patients are going to need corneal transplantation, and not all patients are going to do well on glasses. So at a point, there may be a requirement of changing the cornea. So if you have a keratoconus cornea which is very steep, or which is very scarred, or in which even a contact lens is not actually giving you a good vision. So now most of the patients with keratoconus are young, in their very active age, in which a good visual acuity is of prime importance for them functioning to the full of their capacity. So at such a point, if even scleral contact lenses or specialized contact lenses are not giving good vision, then there may be a point at which we have to decide to go in for corneal transplantation. So although I'm including it in this discussion very late, sometimes this decision may have to be taken very early on after presenting to your doctor, and sometimes your doctor may try to avoid it as much as possible also. So it's a wide range of spectrum of probabilities, and the clinical decision making is dependent on how you respond to the prior modalities of treatment. Now, basically speaking, if in a corneal transplant, what we are doing is we are removing the diseased bit and we are putting in a new cornea. So this is done with the help of a punch machine. So that could be a femtosecond laser punch, or it could be a manual punch, or it could be a vacuum punch. So all these varieties are available. And once the old cornea is removed, or the deceased cornea is removed, a new cornea, which is of a young, healthy donor, will be placed on it. Once it is placed, it has to be joined to the old cornea, like the host cornea. To join it, we place some sutures. So anything between 9 and 16 sutures is what is used. These sutures actually help the new cornea and the old cornea join and form good bonding. Now this keeps happening over for almost a year. The strength between the new cornea and the old cornea happens for almost a year. Another important aspect is how much of cornea we change. So in keratoconus, basically the problem is in the Bowman's membrane and then the stroma. So because of this, changing the whole cornea is many times not required, because the endothelium, or the innermost layer of the cornea, is actually quite healthy. So because of this, oftentimes we resort to something called the anterior lamellar keratoplasty, the version where we remove all the stroma and leave only the endothelium there is called the deep anterior lamellar keratoplasty. and this is the ideal procedure in a case of keratoconus where there is no damage to the endothelium. However, there are certain conditions, like if the patient has already had a rupture of the endothelium because the cone was too high or some other events happening. In those cases, the patient still may require a full thickness or a full transplantation. Now, what is the advantage of having a partial transplantation to a full transplantation is that the lesser the amount of foreign tissue that we are introducing to any patient's body, the better it is. But we have to understand that sometimes it's not possible for various reasons. We may not be able to offer a lamellar procedure to the patients, and sometimes we have to go for a PKP. So all said and done, best option is the deep anterior lamellar keratoplasty or DALK surgery, and then if required, a penetrating keratoplasty. So this is what a graft looks like, and if you can see, there are 16 sutures that are in place, the black lines that are radially seen. These are the suture materials. Now this is a very fine suture material. It's as thin as our hair, and it has its own tensile strength. So typically post surgery, we have to take care of the graft, we have to take care of the sutures. Now, taking care of the sutures means using the drops regularly and not allowing water to enter the eyes. Going for your regular visits, so that if the suture gets loose or it becomes, the knot becomes exposed or it breaks, then we have to remove it. And timely removal can prevent other complications, like a broken suture can actually invite infection, and a loose suture can invite infection, or some blood vessels may grow there. So normally our cornea, and especially the keratoconus cornea, does not have any blood supply. That actually makes corneal transplantation very special as compared to the other organs, because if there is no blood vessel, then the chances of rejection are slightly lesser than other organs. So if that's our advantage, then we should keep it. So having a loose suture or having a broken suture will actually invite blood vessels into the cornea, which makes it likely that the graft will fail faster or get rejected faster. So this is related to sutures. Now, second thing that can happen is the new corneal tissue is actually a foreign tissue, and that can be recognized by the immune system of our body, and that can get rejected. So that is called a graft rejection. So these are the two occurrences because of which we need to use medicines for a long time, take care of the graft, and go for your usual follow-ups. Now this said, if you can see that this is a new cornea, what we have done is we have given the patient a new cornea. But because of the sutures, there may still be some irregularities in the shape. So it may not be a perfect dome. It may still be a little bit here and there. Because of this, what we require to do is, post corneal transplant, we need to again fit the patients either with glasses or with contact lenses. So some people think that the cornea transplant is a panacea for keratoconus, because faulty cornea means new cornea. So that's not the case. Even after corneal transplantation, the story still continues, as in we have to still give some vision improvement measures to the patient, because the cornea can still be a little bit irregular in shape, not as good as the God given or natural cornea. So these are the few things that I wanted to share regarding management of keratoconus at the end stage, or rather at the advanced stages. And please feel free to ask any questions, and thank you for listening.